Cheers. Good morning. Top of the morning to you. This is Sarah here. And I wanted to share something with you. I wanted to share with you about a vodka soda story. You might be thinking, why would you want to share that? And that's okay. It has a point. The vodka soda. And it wasn't even a good vodka. It was like the little plastic bottle pop-off kind, like the bottom shelf at vodka. But it triggered. And I always say triggers are teachers. Triggers gets a bad rap. Triggers are thought to be a bad thing. Triggers are teachers, and teachers are a good thing because they show within us things that we're connected to, things that we have perceptions of, experiences of. And for me, in the past, with the abuse with the narcissist, a lot of alcohol was involved. People who've experienced emotional abuse, neglect, trauma, we run and numb. We turn to things to try and take away the pain. And as I was walking my little dog this morning in my neighborhood, I saw thrown under a bush. I was like, what's that? And I think the reason why it caught my attention and it caught my eye is because my daughter doesn't understand. She doesn't understand alcohol. And there's a big relationship to alcohol that she's already experienced that she doesn't yet understand. And so many of us who've experienced emotional abuse and neglect in the past, we have connections that we may not understand. We have relationships to things that have significantly and severely impacted us, and we just don't get a lot of it. Because maybe it happened at a time where you were 3 years old or 5 years old or 8 years old, and you understood a word. You knew that you knew the word. Maybe you knew that you knew the smell. Maybe if you grew up in an abusive and neglectful home where there was one parent who turned to substances like alcohol, and you knew the tone. Oh man, dad's drunk. Oh man, watch out for mom. You knew the tone, you knew the smell, you knew the sounds of the way that your parents maybe walked through the door. You knew by the way they shut the door that they were drunk, but you didn't know what drunk meant. You knew that they had been out drinking. You knew that alcohol was a word that was involved, but you didn't understand what it was because you hadn't yet had an experience of your own with it. But it was something you knew that was a part of making something off. And there's this inner relationship, this dialogue, this connection that we have. And so as I'm walking my dog and I look over, oh, a little vodka for you. Good morning. And then my dog goes up and sniffs it. And of course, my thought is, it's not even a good kind. I laughed when I heard myself think that. And then I'm looking and there's a Coke next to it, Coca-Cola, like in the back against the wall. And I was like, ooh, vodka soda, anyone? As I'm laughing at myself, talking to myself, my dog doesn't understand what I'm saying, but I'm laughing because it reminded me of another time that I was out hiking with my daughter and she saw those little mini bottles. She knew what a mini bottle was. I've never said that word to her. I've never bought mini bottles. And she sees them in the carousel at the grocery store when we're checking out. And she says something that indicates that she knows someone who drinks those. And we all know someone who drinks those. We ourselves may drink those. It's not bad. That alone, in and of itself, is not a bad thing. Jesus drank wine. Pastor told me this weekend, Jesus drank wine. Alcohol in itself is not a bad thing. It's the way it's used. It's the context that it's used. And when it's mixed with abuse or when it's used to cover or numb from the experience of emotional abuse and neglect, from our inner chaos, from our inner turmoil. And oftentimes we have perceptions, relationships, and experiences with it as children that we don't understand. And my daughter asked me that the other day, Mommy, what is alcohol? And I explained to her in the best possible way that I could, And we've all been there. We've all been children, and we've had relationships and experiences with things that we didn't quite understand or that didn't make sense. And we're meaning making machines. I don't even like that word machines, because then it implies we're just like, "Oh, I am a robot. I am a machine." We're spiritual beings, right? But we're meaning making spiritual beings. That sounds way cooler. We're meaning making spiritual beings. We're trying to make sense of things. We're trying to make things have certain meaning, because with that meaning, if it's something that makes sense to us, we can understand it. We can almost like it's almost like a puzzle piece that we can like just put there. Got it. It goes there. And we feel, oh, good. And we're no longer on the search and on the quest for where does this go? When we make meaning, it goes there. Get it? Got it. We can continue on. But so many things don't. We have a limited perspective and understanding of something, and it has a connection, a correlation, and a relationship to something that we don't understand. Oftentimes, a relationship to something that's painful, that is causing us emotional pain, that's causing us just chaos, inner confusion. We don't understand. And as children and as spiritual beings who are meaning making, we want to understand. We feel good when we understand. So we go on this quest to try and understand. And we don't realize that we've been doing this for so long. And so when we become adults and we have this confliction with things, it's like, so what does that mean then? And then oftentimes we forget that we had that first experience with it that didn't make sense. And now, as you grow up, right, say that you're a child in that case, you don't quite understand what alcohol is, but you understand that whenever dad comes home after he's been drinking and he smells a certain way, later you have your own experience with alcohol and it takes you down whatever road it takes you down. Maybe you avoid it altogether because you don't want to be like that. You learned how you don't want to be. Maybe you get really curious about it. And then maybe you yourself have so much emotional pain, you begin drinking at a very young age. And then it begins to feel really, really good because it numbs that inner voice that's constantly yelling at you the way that your dad or mom was yelling at you, and the way that you began yelling at you, the way that you began speaking to you. You don't like the way that it speaks to you. So now when you consume enough of this substance, it doesn't speak to you like that anymore. It's gone, it's quiet, it's shut up, it's passed out in your inner mental floor. It's not very helpful or useful. It doesn't even seem to be around. And then every time it comes back, you go back to that because you don't like what it has to say to you and you don't like the way that it leaves you feeling. So all of this, I said to say, came from walking my dog and seeing a vodka soda. And I kind of had to laugh because it was thrown away and it was discarded, but it was empty. And seeing the empty bottle reminded me of how empty people can feel inside when they use and abuse substances. We're filling our feelings when we use it to that extent. In and of itself, it's not a bad thing. If you're responsible with it, with whatever it is that you're using, food can be used in the same way that alcohol can be used. Other substances, prescription medication, if you followed and you're taken as directed, they can be very beneficial and helpful. But a lot of people are using them in a way that's not helpful or beneficial. They're not using as directed. We're not going to get on that whole tangent about that. But what it really is an indication of something going on within that is out of balance. Everything that we experience internally that causes us this feeling of emotional chaos, this feeling of, I don't like this, I want to get rid of this. And we turn to something outside of us to use that. Substances, food, medications, things that are not medications are an indication that there's something off within. And it's unfortunate that so many people turn to things outside of themselves to just quiet that thing, that voice, those feelings within themselves, and don't allow themselves the opportunity to really get to the core and the root of what it is. I've worked with a lot of people who have not called themselves alcoholics, but have admitted and become very aware that their relationship with substances was unhealthy, was not what they wanted it to be, that it felt like it was becoming habitual, that they were using it more often and in a way that they didn't want to use it. And when they've gone through the process and the experience of getting to the very core and the root of what was causing them to have that impulse or that urge or the feeling that they need that thing, then they were able to have a much healthier, a much more beneficial, and a much more improved relationship with it. I'm not on here to say alcohol is a bad thing, but when it's taken to that extent and you're looking at it, you're looking at the empty bottle and you're seeing that that external representation of the empty bottle is a reflection of your internal state. I feel empty inside, just as empty as that nasty, cheap, disgusting bottle. I feel nasty. I feel cheap. I feel disgusting, because oftentimes it leads you down the road of doing things that you wouldn't want to do. I've got a private Facebook group called Time to Rise. Excuse me, that's probably an unconscious thing. I just shared about that this morning, my own experience of the misuse and the abuse of alcohol back in the day, and the road that it led me down, the chaos, the destruction, the choices that I made that were not choices that I would make if I was sober, or if I truly loved myself, if I truly respected myself. And a lot of times that's what it is this use of this external substance to try and not feel the way that you're self-harming, the way that you're disrespecting yourself, the choices that you make, the pain, the guilt, the shame that you feel from making those choices, and it leads you down a dark road, it leads you down a road that leads you to feeling empty inside. And that was just what came to mind this morning as I'm walking my dog. Wow, empty bottle to fill an empty soul. And that's what we feel like our soul is when we're using things, and then we're just throwing them away, we're tossing them, we're discarding them, we're littering them. I mean, we're littering our body, we're littering our mind when we're not getting on the road to getting to the core and the very root of what's causing us to feel that way, to believe those things about ourselves. What is it that took us down that road? I mean, you don't just wake up one day and you're just, I'm an alcoholic. I have this issue. I have this issue. I have this issue. It's a progression over time that leads down that road. And you may feel like I've been on this road for far too long. I don't know what to do. I've tried to get off this road before and nothing's helped. Nothing's worked. And in fact, doing the things that are supposed to help actually make me feel worse about myself. And most of those things, unfortunately, are just a conscious effort. And what's happening, what's going on, is that there's a subconscious disconnect. There's a subconscious belief to something that you don't want to believe about yourself, that leads to feelings that you don't want to have about yourself, that leads to thoughts you don't want to hear about yourself. So all of that becomes compounded. So when you get to the very core, the very root of it, you're able to quickly connect to what it is, disconnect to that, reconnect to something much more powerful, much more greater, much more positive, and much more beneficial, so that you don't need to use things like that. A representation of an empty bottle is a mirror representation of how you feel about yourself inside, so that you no longer need to feel empty, useless, worthless, like a piece of trash and garbage inside that you're just able to discard so easily. And that simply was a reflection or representation of the bottle versus those who use it for that reason and that purpose. So I'm not here to say all people who drink are bad. In fact, I enjoy a nice drink, but when it's misused and when it's used against you in a way that's hurting you and others, then there's more there, and there's more to really sit with and be with, and to get to the core and the root of, if you're really wanting to get on a different path much more quickly. So love to connect with you if that's where you're at. Just wanted to share that insight with you, because like my daughter, there are people watching you, and you may not have children of your own, but we all come from a family. We all come from a community. And when we help ourselves, when we heal ourselves, we help and heal others as well. So it is possible, and it's not as hard as you would like to think it is. I can assure you, I've worked with so many people who've overcome not only that addiction, but so many other things in their lives when they've allowed themselves the gift and the opportunity to get to the very core and root of it, and what has caused it internally and subconsciously. So thank you guys. You're not an empty pop-off bottle. You are so much better than that. And I just want you to know that. Okay, sending you so much love from wherever you're at. Bye for now.